Okay, I think everyone's been let in from the lobby. Good evening, everyone. How are you all tonight? Thank you for joining us for another clinical trial update from the Prader-Willi Research Foundation Australia. I'm Kathleen Jones and I'm the founder and CEO of PWRFA. I'm also mum to Chloe, who was a catalyst for this organisation and our work. And this is her beautiful smile lighting up your screen tonight. Back from when she was doing just one of her sleep studies. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we're meeting tonight across this vast continent of Australia that we call home. We pay our respect to elders past, present and emerging, and we look forward to the day when there is healthcare equity. Welcome to all First Nations people who are joining us tonight, or indeed for a later viewing of this webinar. A little bit of housekeeping. Tonight is a live Q&A session, so please put your questions into the Q&A section. You can see I'm pointing to it just here with my cursor, and Dr. Diane Webster will be moderating the Q&A following the presentations. So just reminding you, please put your questions into the Q&A. I love seeing these photos of our kids who really are so just beautiful and inspirational. Tonight we are talking about clinical trials, and clinical trials are a vital link in determining the efficacy and safety of potential treatments, and our children and adults can play a crucial role in this link in the treatment development pathway. At the same time, clinical trials enable our children and adults to access the latest in potential treatments, which is particularly important when there are no accessible approved medications. And that's particularly the case for hyperphagia still, whilst we are waiting for access to VYKAT. So this is a two-way street. I'm delighted that we're now seeing many more clinical trials available to Australians with Prader-Willi syndrome than ever before. And this is in many ways thanks to our research director, Diane Webster, who has worked hard behind the scenes for years to build the relationships and the infrastructure to bring about this change. And Diane, I want to thank you for all of your hard work for our community. And as you know, or as many of you know, at Prader-Willi Research Foundation Australia, we celebrate May, which is the International Month of Prader-Willi Awareness, with our Finding 15 walks. And this year we're partnering with Prader-Willi Syndrome Australia. So we're now raising awareness and funds for Prader-Willi research and support. These walks are a terrific day, bringing together our children and adults, families and friends, politicians, researchers and industry, all to share in progressing Prader-Willi syndrome. So this year we are also incredibly grateful to be sponsored by some of the key movers and shakers in Prader-Willi syndrome internationally and in Australia. And that includes Aardvark Therapeutics, Soleno Therapeutics, Harmony Biosciences, EPM Therapeutics and Interaction Disability Service. And we want to thank all of them so much for supporting our community. Many of them are supporting this walk as well as having supported our Asia Pacific Prader-Willi Syndrome Conference. So it's wonderful to have these partnerships that really enable us to continue this vital work for our community. Look, we kicked off May with our Melbourne walk last weekend, and we have Brisbane on the 18th of May and Sydney on the 25th of May. In addition to walking with purpose, our big and little kids have a really great day out, connecting and sharing great experiences with each other. This includes activities like our petting zoo, which is always a favourite, jumping castles, discos, face painting, etc. So it's a really fun day out. We also have special guests this year, including Terence from Harmony Biosciences in Brisbane and our new Prader-Willi nurse coordinator, Charlotte, who's based at the Sydney Children's Hospital, will be coming along to our Sydney walk. So it'd be great if many people as possible from Sydney can come along and meet her and welcome her to our community. The success of these walks really is vital to keeping all of our work going. So really, if you can support us by attending, sharing, bringing extended family, friends, everybody that you know, daycare, schools, day programs, we'd be incredibly grateful. You make it possible for our work to continue, and it's just a team effort. So we want to thank you for your support over the years, which really has enabled us to deliver so much. Now I'm going to welcome our Research Director, Dr. Diane Webster, to host our presentations and the live Q&A. She is Australia's leading Prader-Willi syndrome research expert, again, made possible through the support of our wonderful families and friends. She's been with us since 2016 and has been instrumental in developing the National Prader-Willi Research Roadmap. Diane, welcome.
Thanks, Kath. I will just move that slide along. I'm really delighted to be here. I'm joining you all from Wurundjeri country, one of the Kulin nations. This evening, we're going to shine a spotlight on some of the clinical trials that are currently recruiting in Australia. Clinical trials is such an important part of research. They're often referred to as the bridge between science and a drug that's available on the market. But I think it's also really important to understand that they can play a role in helping us understand the underlying mechanism of a particular symptom or a set of symptoms. Tonight, we're going to be hearing from representatives from Harmony Biosciences who are going to tell us about the TEMPO study, looking at Pitolisant and excessive daytime sleepiness. We're going to hear from Associate Professor Tania Markovic, who's going to give us an update on the Tirzepatide Safety Trial, which was funded by last year's PWRFA grant program. We're going to hear from Dr. Lauren Rice, who is co-funded by FPWR in the US and PWRFA. She's running a fantastic brain imaging study looking at the effect of Acamprosate. And we're also going to hear from a newer researcher to our program, Elena Halalekic. Sorry, Helena Anella. Anella's going to talk about growth and resting energy expenditure, and a really fascinating study she's doing for her PhD. So I think it's we're really very, very lucky to have these amazing researchers, clinicians join us tonight. Before we jump in, I want to just remind everybody that the Research Foundation does not endorse or recommend any specific study. What we're aiming to do is provide you with information about the trials which are recruiting in Australia. We strongly encourage you to use this opportunity to learn from the study leads, ask lots and lots of questions, and then consider if any of these trials are right for you. So through the evening, as you watch the pre-recorded presentations, please put your questions in the Q&A, and we will be sure to ask them of the panel when we're done. So Nicole, I'm going to hand back to you to start those presentations for us.
Hi, I just wanted to double check everyone can hear the audio of the recording that we're playing. Just do a thumbs up if everyone can hear. Okay, perfect. Let's continue.
I'm going to leap in for a minute. I'm going to assume that Nicole's working on getting our video back up and running. So we'll see how that goes. I think we're super excited to have the Harmony trial sites open down here in Australia. It's always really good when we see the big studies starting to reach out.
Can we just get a check on who can actually, if you can't hear anything, that's a bit hard because they can't hear. I'll put it in the chat. Okay, thanks, Georgina.
Right, I'm going to press play, and if you're having any issues, just flag in the chat for us. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, thank you. So before we move on to the panel Q&A, I would like to give a shout out to one final study. It's the Australian Chromosome 15 Biobank, which is being run by Associate Professor David Godler at the Murdoch Children's Research Institute. David will be joining us for the Q&A as well. The biobank is a collection of biological samples that is linked to clinical histories and phenotypic assessments. This incredibly rich data set is such a valuable resource to support research. And it's thanks to the Prader-Willi community that there are samples from around about 30 people logged in the biobank now. These samples are used by David in his research to identify new drug targets, particularly in the field of PWS behaviours and mental health. We're also really excited that we've had 2 requests from outside MCRI to access samples. It's so wonderful to see the biobank in action. The biobank is still recruiting individuals of all ages with PWS. So if you're interested, do reach out to David and his team. Now, so you will find more information about these trials on the website. We will also have recordings loaded onto our YouTube channel. So feel free to have a click through and look at those. But I think we're about to move into what's arguably the most interesting portion of our evening. We have representatives from each of the studies that you've heard about joining us tonight. And I'd like to invite our panelists to pop their videos on, and we'll begin the Q&A portion of our night. So joining us, we have, so Anella, thank you for popping your video on. Anella's joining us from La Trobe. Welcome, Anella. Teams doesn't seem to be sorting very well. There we go. We've got Anne from Harmony. Anne's joining us all the way from America. Whereabouts are you, Anne?
I'm in Chicago.
Excellent. And we have Tania Markovic, who's joining us from Sydney, from the Royal Prince Alfred Hospital. Lauren Rice, also affiliated with Sydney, but I believe up in Broome. Is that right, Lauren? Awesome. And Vickers Goyle from Queensland Children's Hospital, working on the Tempo study. And I think David Godler, would that be everyone? Excellent. David's coming from MCRI. So super excited. Thank you all so much for providing the pre-records for families to view and for coming online tonight to answer some questions. We've got quite a few coming in, so I think we'll just launch straight in with those questions. So if we start with the Harmony trial, we have questions around what a normal adult dose would be and how quickly they'll be titrated onto those doses. Vickers, is that a question for you or a question for Anne?
Well, I can answer the question about dosing. The dosing so there are 2 things, like there is commercially used dose for narcolepsy and the dose for this study. For this study, the dosing is based on weight of the patient. So whether they are less than 40 kilos, 40 to 80 kilos and more than 80 kilos. The patients who are more than 80 kilos, they take up to 4 weeks to titrate to the maximum dose. The ones who are less than 40 kilos, they go up to their maximum dose in 2 weeks. And the ones which are 40 to 80 kilos, they take 3 weeks to titrate to the maximum dose. Correct me if I'm wrong, Anne, but that's
Nope, you are correct.
What we do here. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. And I'll throw the next one to you. So thinking, looking at perhaps the phase 2 and even potentially phase 1 results, do you see any reports of participants who are experiencing an increase in sleep disturbances at night when they're on Pitolisant? So I know you're aiming for treating excessive daytime sleepiness. Is there an impact in nighttime sleep?
Not that I have seen, and I am not a doctor by any means, so Pitolisant has the potential to cause insomnia. That's on the label, but in general, no, there's been nothing like that.
Excellent, thank you. And I think asking about those side effects and understanding what's involved is really important. I noticed when I was looking at the Harmony presentation that many of the outcome measures are patient-reported measured. I wonder if you'd like to speak to the placebo effect. You know, what is it, and how important is the approach that parents take to those questionnaires?
Yeah, the caregiver is responsible for answering these questionnaires, and it is subjective, and so the placebo response, that is a real thing, and we show a video to the parents, caregivers, that kind of reviews how that can impact things, right? Just you want a certain outcome, and so you see it in a person, and that's true for any study. You don't have to take a placebo to have a placebo effect if you want something in your head. So you really just have to answer the way the study is set up. There's a app on your phone and you answer questions, and you just have to really just answer the question for how your child or the person you're taking care of is, how you see it at that moment. So we just ask like for a thoughtful response to things. Don't try and please the doctor, by saying that it works. Just answer the questions. And it's really hard. I mean, when you think about when someone asks you a question about something so subjective. But
Yeah. So what we do, Diane, is every study visit, so screening, enrollment, and the follow-up visit, day 22, 29, I keep reminding the caregiver that there is a 50% chance your child is actually not on the active ingredient. So forget about being on the study, just think about their behavior and
yeah,
answer the questions that way. Because we also keep on reminding them it's equally important for us to know that if it doesn't work. We don't have to push those answers to make it look like it works.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's good advice, I think. And also, I think good to hear that there's a lot of training sits behind these as well, a lot of support for families in terms of how to approach the trials as well. So another question, I might just want to run through the Harmony questions all in one go. So will Wakix, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, that's the brand name for Pitolisant, be available in Australia soon? And ballpark costs, I'm not sure that's a fair one to ask, actually. There's a lot of really.
Yeah,
Go for it, Anne.
it isn't. So what we make clear for this study is we are the US licensee of Pitolisant. So we are not able to submit an application for this drug in Australia. We don't own the rights to it. So we are asking for the help of the Pitolisant community globally to help enroll this phase 3 trial. And then the hope then is that this data is good. We don't know if the drug works or not. That's why we're running these trials, and that will generate enough interest in those who do have the ability to submit a marketing application at some point down the line. But the answer is no. Unfortunately, this trial won't get Pitolisant on the market in Australia, but it gets it out there and the data out there, and that downstream will hopefully help.
I think follow on to that is primarily Wakix or Pitolisant was actually initially marketed for patients with narcolepsy. So there is a narcolepsy working group who is also advocating for this drug to be made available to patients in Australia for narcolepsy. So I think once there is more than one indication and stronger advocacy from different groups, there is some data in some of the other conditions as well. But even before this trial came along, the the sleep specialists interested in narcolepsy were already advocating, because there were some patients trying to access the medication. And to answer the other question, I have unverified reports from um, someone who had tried to apply for the medication through like self-funded through a special access scheme. I was told it will be around $500-600 a month, so it will be fair bit of cost, like if it's not on PBS. But at the moment, it's not even available in Australia as a private script, so it's not gone through the TG approval.
It's going to be an interesting space for us to do a lot of advocacy work in years to come, I think, or days and weeks and months and years to come. Yeah. I wonder, perhaps as a final question, for now, for the Tempo trial, one of our parents is asking if we could define excessive daytime sleepiness. They've put emphasis on excessive. What constitutes excessive?
That is hard to say. It is your child or the person you care for has to be very, very sleepy to meet that criteria. And what we do is ask, well, not we, but the investigators, they are asking questions and the caregivers are answering those subjective questionnaires. So for this trial, we ask that people are very, very sleepy. You fall asleep sitting and reading a book. There's questions that are asked that indicate how sleepy you are. So you really have to, it has to be impacting your day-to-day life. Dr. Goyle, is that a good assessment?
Yeah, so in our clinics, Diane, we see a lot of patients with Prader-Willi syndrome because we do the PWS clinic. And what we there are two types of sleepiness in Prader-Willi syndrome. One is somnolence, like more sleepy than baseline than other children with Prader-Willi syndrome. A lot of these children are a bit more tired than their peers without Prader-Willi syndrome because of their low tone as well. So that is more because of the fatigue, not necessarily because of sleepiness. But as the sleepiness evolves, again, you have to tease it out, because some children have a tendency to fall asleep while they're being driven to school, or they're going for a long drive, which is not necessarily sleepiness. But as Anne said, if they're falling asleep, for example, while reading a book in the middle of a conversation, or sleepiness which ends up affecting their activities of daily living. That's what I call excessive daytime sleepiness. And it has to be without another cause. So if the child has bad obstructive sleep apnea, which is not treated, or they have obstructive sleep apnea and we have given them a CPAP machine, which the family is not able to adhere to, or the child doesn't like, or, untreated obstructive sleep apnea, then that can cause somnolence or sleepiness during the day. But just to differentiate, there are certain teenagers with Prader-Willi syndrome who have full-blown narcolepsy type sleepiness, that they are too sleepy, and you don't necessarily have to have narcolepsy to be on this trial. If they have sleepiness, the parents feel that they are more sleepy than usual, then we are happy to screen them for the study.
So it sounds like that there's a lot of variables in there. It sounds like the best thing to do will be to reach out and have a preliminary call with one of the site leads that's close to you, and then you can run through at a much more personal level in terms of understanding some of those variables. So sort of a level of advice beyond what can be done in a webinar. Make a call, have a conversation, and then decide whether you want to pursue things from there.
Yes, and if there is no site close to you, just to mention, we do cover the cost of travel to a site. So that should not be, I mean, it's a limiting factor because there are factors about traveling, but from a cost perspective, the screening, all those visits are covered.
That's fantastic. That's really good to know. Okay, so Tania, can I bring you up now for the Tirzepatide trial? I was curious to know what happens when participants on the study get to the end of 12 weeks, assuming that it's been safe for them, which is, you know, the point of the trial is to determine that. Assuming it's been safe to them, are they going to be able to continue on Tirzepatide? What happens at that point, the end of the 12 weeks?
Yes. Well, we were, if we haven't really thought about it in a lot of detail. If they lose weight, I would be glad to prescribe it, but unfortunately it's not on the PBS for anyone. So it would mean that families would have to pay for the drug. So it is an option if we see that it's actually effective, but it's something that comes with a cost.
Yeah. So that would be, you know, so you'd need signs of safety and efficacy and sort of the cost benefit, I guess, of making sure it was worth continuing. Look, we're really excited about your trial. There's so much in the news around these drugs, and it's going to be so important to work out, you know, what those safety profiles and, you know, the risks and the benefits are. Do you have travel available for this study as well?
Look, we don't really. We're doing it. It's a very tight budget, and it's you know, we're very lucky that we've got people involved who are giving their services at no cost, including, I didn't mention the meal studies, which normally are very expensive. So this is funded just by you, the parents, and the time with the doctors, and you know, we've got these capsules that will be interesting to see what they show. So unfortunately the answer is no.
No worries. It's as I say, it's going to be a really interesting study. So I think if you're around about the Royal Prince Alfred Hospital, then reach out to Tania for more on that one. If you've got any further questions,
but I should mention that. Sorry, Diane, to interrupt. We've had some, you know, very generous families who've come. You know, somebody's come from Canberra to be involved, and people travel a fair distance to come to our clinic. So people have been very kind, and, you know, I'd like to acknowledge them for donating their time and to help answer some important questions, we think.
So that's a really important distinction, I think, in terms of the travel. So travel being different from the potential for costs being reimbursed in terms of who's eligible for the trial as well. Yeah.
Yes. Excellent.
Lauren, if I can move on to a question for you, or a couple of questions for you. Do you think everyone with Prader-Willi syndrome is going to respond the same? So some people have Prader-Willi with autism, and some have Prader-Willi without autism. Do you think you'll see that show up in your study?
Based on our original brain imaging studies, which looked at brain GABA levels, we found that people with Prader-Willi syndrome with more severe behaviour problems had lower brain GABA levels, and therefore we might see a greater increase in brain GABA levels in those individuals and an increase in brain connectivity. However, there's been so little research done on the GABA system in people with PWS, it's hard to say whether it'll differ across genetic subtypes or males or females. When it comes to autism, we did find that reduced brain GABA levels was associated with some autism-like behaviours, but it was also associated with overall behaviour problems and PWS-specific behaviour problems as well. So I don't think it'll only work for people with Prader-Willi with autism, and the autism-like behaviours weren't specific to people with Prader-Willi and autism. There are people with Prader-Willi who have social communication difficulties that are associated with their Prader-Willi syndrome. So I don't think it's autism specific, but we need more research to really understand exactly who might have altered GABA systems.
Interesting, thank you. I noticed that you're also calling for participants who don't have Prader-Willi syndrome, so people with or without PWS. Can you tell me a little bit more about who you're looking for and what their role in the study will be?
Yeah, they'll be playing a really important role in this trial because our hypothesis is that people with Prader-Willi syndrome have a unique brain response to GABA products or products that work on the GABA system. And so in order to show that, we need to include people with and without Prader-Willi syndrome. And our hypothesis is that when providing Acamprosate, it will result in lower brain GABA levels for people without Prader-Willi syndrome and higher brain GABA levels for people with Prader-Willi syndrome, which will lead to higher increased brain connectivity for people with PWS. So yeah, control participants are really vital for this project. If there's any loved ones of people with PWS aged 18 to 30, we'd really encourage you to participate if you can. We chose Acamprosate because it is TGA approved and it has a really good safety profile. There's been a lot of studies done with people who don't have Prader-Willi or any mental illness, and it's shown to be, safe. And it's only taken for 10 days.
Excellent, thank you. And one final question from one of the parents online tonight. Which GABA product will be used? So Acamprosate, and can people already taking GABA products participate?
People currently taking GABA products cannot participate unless they're happy to stop that product for 4 weeks, participate in the trial for 10 days, and then go back on the product. Because we do need to measure baseline brain GABA levels, we need people to not be taking a GABA product. But I should also make it clear that this trial isn't looking at whether Acamprosate is the drug to improve behaviour in Prader-Willi. What we're really testing is a model. So it's looking at whether people with Prader-Willi syndrome have altered GABA systems. And because GABA is one of the most abundant chemicals in the brain and so many other chemicals interact with it, we are thinking that, for example, with oxytocin, oxytocin binds to GABA, which then influences how oxytocin works with behaviour. If the GABA system's not working, that could be why oxytocin's not working. DCCR, which has just been FDA approved, the company that owns that, Soleno Therapeutics, they also believe that some of the improved behaviour that they're seeing from DCCR is working on the GABA system. So what this trial is really looking at is finding a way to investigate the GABA system in people with PWS that could then be used not just for GABA products, but for a range of products that we think are being influenced, that influence behaviour through the GABA system.
Fascinating. The science, I won't get started. The science is really, really interesting behind some of these interconnected pathways. I think that it'll be fascinating to see as more and more therapies roll out and more of these studies happen, just what we learn. It's going to be great. Talking of more and more studies, it's probably a good point to bring you in, David. I know with the biobank that it's an incredibly rich resource for families, or for the person participating in the biobank. There's a lot of different analyses that are gathered. Why is it so important that we have all of those different studies collected in one place?
So can you hear me okay, right? So yep. we have a number of hypothesis-driven studies funded by NHMRC and PWRFA, looking at brain tissues from individuals who passed away with Prader-Willi with different subtypes, but also importantly, the things that we are looking for using fancy tools like artificial intelligence and various state-of-the-art technologies is to see whether we can fix things that are potentially broken and are specific to different subtypes. For us to be able to see clinical significance of those findings, we need living individuals, patients with Prader-Willi, where we've assessed in depth Prader-Willi specific behaviors, as well as more general things like autistic features, intellectual functioning deficits, etc. So, as well as answering specific questions with our studies, we will make this resource available to others, so then they don't need to do the same thing as what we are doing. And so not only those assessments are quite expensive and take a lot of time. So if also some of these assessments cannot be done until a certain period of time passes between them. And so we're trying to kill multiple birds with one stone, pardon the, so if that's the right way to say it, so that, our measurements and the data that we've collected through formal assessments by trained psychologists, other people can use without spending money and time for it and answering questions that we are not answering. That's from a clinical and phenotypic perspective, but also we're collecting biospecimens, and that's important not just to understand what is going on from a mechanistic perspective, but also to be able to stratify individuals into subgroups based on their biology. And that could potentially transform a trial that's not successful into a successful one where you have subgroups that respond, even though you might not get a response for the full group, because Prader-Willi is heterogeneous. It's not just subtypes. There's other things that are built on it, the background, genetic background, proteomics, and various other things. I'm not going to go into details in this, but in fields like cancer, personalized medicine is the way to go, coupling understanding the mechanism with the way you treat the condition. So that I don't know whether I've gone over in terms of what answered your question or not, but yeah, let me know.
No, I think it's good. So I think that there might be a range of tests that are needed, but they're going to be used in so many different ways, and the richness of that data has huge potential to inform lots of different studies.
And I just want to say, sorry, to Lauren, GABA is one of our top things that are coming up. So again, we should chat about this.
Love it. So while Lauren and David are off initiating a new research project, there's a YouTube video for the biobank if you would like some more details on the biobank and the exact data that's in there as well. Which brings us round to Anela. Thank you for your patience. So a couple of questions for you as well. I wonder if you could define what resting energy expenditure is for us.
Yes.
If
so can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep. So resting energy expenditure can be, I guess, categorized in different ways, but the one that we're specifically looking at is basal metabolic rate, or BMR. And that's specifically looking at the energy that someone expends or uses while they're at rest. So that could be, it doesn't include any eating, because we know that eating, for example, your body uses extra energy for digestion, otherwise known as diet-induced thermogenesis. That's extra energy that our body uses, but we're specifically looking at the basal metabolic rate. So it doesn't include eating, it doesn't include any sort of movement throughout the day. All of that is added on top of it. So we're really focusing on that baseline energy expenditure and seeing how that matches to kids without Prader-Willi syndrome, and if it is actually lower in comparison.
Excellent. So that's talking about, basically you're just sitting really still as the energy that we use to keep warm for our heart to pump, to breathe, those sorts of that's what you mean by base functions.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah. And that's why as well that's why ideally the kids are also fasting, because that then eliminates that diet component, and that's how we really get to that baseline without having that diet-induced thermogenesis involved.
Excellent. All right, there was another question in here for you as well. Growth hormone. Do you think you'll be able to recruit enough people, enough children, so you'll be able to look with and without growth hormone use?
We're hoping to. Growth hormone is a component of the data that we're collecting. So we're looking at whether the child is currently or has been previously on growth hormone therapy, the type of medication, the dosage, as well as when it started, because we would expect that if an infant had started on growth hormone therapy, their body composition would potentially be different to a child that has started a lot later in life. So we'd like to investigate, or I guess look into whether that has an impact on their energy expenditure and whether we can link the two as well. So definitely one of the things that we're looking into, and we're hoping to recruit enough kids to be able to make that that association.
Excellent. Fantastic. We've got a few more questions coming in, but we are actually at 9:15, which we did say was the time that we would finish up at. So I think we might hold some of those over and perhaps just sort of liaise with some email replies on some of those. There is a question around whether these trials are available in New Zealand. We are having conversations with PWSA New Zealand around ways we can work together to bring trials down, but you'll have to talk with Joe to find out exactly what's available in New Zealand. And I think with that, I'd really like to thank the panel. They have been amazing. If we can bring up the slide deck again, Nicole, just with the link for our website where there's additional information. So it has the contact details, the age ranges and the locations on that website there as well. In addition, there's a link for, oops, there we go. In addition, there's a link for the our YouTube channel, which has got the video presentations as well, and you'll be able to access this recording in due course there as well. Now, before we go, then we have one more little announcement for tonight. We're very excited that we have an additional study which will be coming soon. It's the HERO study from Aardvark, which is another phase 3 study. It'll be in 3 locations, so Sydney, Newcastle and Brisbane. We'll have a webinar with some additional information on that in hopefully June. So to finish up, I think another huge thank you to all of our panelists tonight for sharing all those details about the studies that are recruiting in Australia now. Also, on behalf of the whole Prader-Willi community, I'd like to offer a very special thank you to everyone who's participated in a clinical trial. Every single one of these trials advances research. As Vic has said, it doesn't matter what the result is, it advances research. Clinical trial participation is a very real way that you can accelerate research and shorten the time it takes to get to new therapies. I was traveling to work this morning. I got off my train, rush hour morning traffic, and the platform attendant summed it up beautifully. She said, use all the doors, look left and right, move down the platform, make sure all the carriages are full. The faster we get everyone on board, the sooner this train can depart. So when I was drafting this talk, it's like, well, look, not every trial will be the right trial for you. But we would encourage you to make sure all those carriages are full. You know, look left and right, speak to the trial coordinators, ask lots and lots of questions, find a trial that makes sense for you and for your family, because the faster we get everyone on board, the sooner we'll reach our destination, which of course are therapies for Prader-Willi syndrome. Finally, if you are able to, we would love to see you at one of our Finding 15 fundraising walks. You can attend in person in Brisbane on the 18th or in Sydney on the 25th. I believe you can also log activity hours online if you're not in Brisbane or Sydney. Don't forget that we have Terence from Harmony Biosciences joining us for the Brisbane walk. It'll be a great opportunity for a face-to-face conversation around the Tempo trial. From the whole team at the Research Foundation, we want to just send a heartfelt thank you for your ongoing support for the work that the Foundation's doing. And thank you very much for attending tonight. If you have any questions about these trials, you can reach out directly to the trial coordinators, or you can reach out to us and we'll help put you in touch. So thank you very much and good night.